Hello and welcome back to this new video on my channel. Thank you for voting on my last post in the community. I see that the most of you are interested to learn more about LINQ in UiPath. Therefore I created this video, and I will create new videos about LINQ in UiPath. So if you have a specific question or need, what you want to learn in my channel, please write me a comment. I will try to create a simple video for you. Let's start. Today I will show you how to filter a data table using LINQ Query. We have here an input data table. We have a LINQ query, which we execute for this data table. From this LINQ query we will get a new data table, which contains the filtered data. For example, we have this data table, which consists of two columns, city and country. Assume we want to get only rows, where the country is USA. We use a LINQ query, which gives as output the following data table. In this new data table we have only the rows, where the country is USA. The video contains different examples, how to filter a data table using different criterias. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe my channel. If you have any questions about LINQ queries, please write us a comment and we will try to help you in the next videos. Don't hesitate to write us, we are for you here. Let's go. First I will show you, how does the query looks like in general. Later we will implement this query and also other queries in UiPath, so that you can understand the topic better. The query consists of 5 parts. The first and last part are brackets, within we write the different statements to filter the data table. The first statement is from. Using this statement we take the data from the data table. To do this we create a variable, for example row. After this variable we write the preposition in, and then the name of the data table. This statement is ready. So this statement is like for each row activity in UiPath, which goes through the rows of a data table. Let's move to the next statement, where. Where is a statement, where we can add a condition to select the data from the data table. It means, that we here define, what data from the data table we want to look at. In this statement we filter the data, which we want to get as output from this query. The next statement is select. This statement is to select the data from the data table, which we filtered in the previous statement. In this case we want to select the entire row, therefore we add here the variable row, which we defined at the beginning in from statement. The last thing we have to add to this query is a function, which converts the selected data into a specific data type. In our case we want to get the output as data table, therefore we add the function, copy to data table. The query is ready now to use. Let's try to write the statement here, to select all rows from the data table, where the country is USA. Assume the input data table is called, Excel_DT. We write here the name. And now the condition. As mentioned, we want to get all rows, where the country is equal to USA. First we use the row variable, then we write the column name to filter the data table using it. In this case is it the column country. You can also write the column index instead of the column name. I mostly use the column name, because the column names are always the same in my table, but the order of the column could be changed, therefore the column name is better. And then we have to use the function ToString. In this way we get the content of the column country as string. After that we can use the function trim, to trim the content. It must not be used, but it's recommended to use it, because you maybe have an empty space in the column. At the end we have to write the value. It's USA. The query means now, that we go through all rows in the data table and we search in the column country, if the content is equal to USA. If the content is equal to USA, we will get the row in the output data table. But you can also use other ways to set the same condition. We can for example use the function contains. The condition looks like this. Contains function is helpful then, if you could have a long text and for you it's important, if the word USA is in this text, but the rest of the text is irrelevant. Sometimes you could also want to get all rows from the data table, except the rows where the content is equal to a specific text. In this case you can use not at the beginning. It means, that we want to get each row from the input data table, except the rows where the country column contains the word USA. As you see, you can use different conditions in where statement. It depends on your needs. So before you set a condition, you have to define what you need, and how is your data looks like. Then you can use the different functions to filter your data. Let's now switch to UiPath to implement these examples, and also other examples to filter the data table using other conditions. I have here a build data table activity, where I define the columns and rows. The table consists of 2 columns, city and country. I have here the same data, what I showed you before. I have here also some empty rows in the table. Let's save this table into a DataTable variable called Excel_DT. Let's also create another variable for the output, called out_DT. To write the query, we need an assign activity. As mentioned, I want to save the output into a new DataTable variable, therefore I will use this variable. Now I will write the query as explained before. First the brackets, then from statement. Now I will write the condition to get only the rows, where the country is equal to USA. The rest of the query is the same. So the query is ready. I have first this statement to go through all rows of the data table. Then I have the condition, where I check if the country column content is equal to USA. After that I select each row, which meets the condition. And at the end I convert the output into a data table type. I will add for each row activity, to print the content of the new table into the console, so that you can check the results, if the query is successfully executed. I will only print the content of the column city into the console using writeLine activity. Let's now run the code to check the result. As you see, we only have 3 cities from the data table, where the country is USA. This means that everything is correct. Let's now change the query. I will change the condition to get the same result, but now using the function contains. I will run the code again to check the results. As you see, we have again the same 3 cities. Let's now move to a new scenario, where I want to use a variable instead of the word USA. I will create a string variable. I will add the value USA for this variable. And now I will change the query, so that I will use the variable instead of the text. As you see, I only added the variable instead of the text. I don't need to do anything more. And the value of this variable is USA. Using the variable makes your query dynamic, so that you can use the query with different values of the variable. Let's run the code again to see the result. We have again the same 3 cities, which means that everything is correct. Let's change the query again. I will add not at the beginning. This means that I want to get all rows from the table, except the rows where the country is equal to USA. Let's run the code again. As you see, we have now all cities, where the country is not equal to USA. We also have here the empty rows, because the country is also not equal to USA. How can we remove these empty rows from the data table? I will change the query to do it. I will use the function, IsNullOrEmpty. This function checks the content, if it's empty or null. It means, we check here if the row is empty. But here we check the row if empty only using one column, country. We have also not at the beginning, which means that I want to get each row from the table, except the empty rows. Let's run the code to see the result. As you see, we have all cities from the data table, and we don't have any empty entries. It means, we removed the empty rows from the table. Let's now see another scenario. I want now to filter the table using more than one column. Until now I filtered the table only using one column. Let's see how to filter using more than one column. I will use the function contains. I only need to enter, and then I can write the second condition for another column. This condition means now, that I want to get each row from the data table, where the country is USA and the city is New York. Let's run the code. As you see, we have only one row which meets the condition. In this way you can filter the data table using more than one column. You can add also other columns. You only need to enter, and, between the different parts. You can also enter, or, between the parts, if you want to get the rows, which meets one part of the condition. Let's change the query using OR. I will change, and, to, or, and then I will use the same column country. Let's write here Germany. This means, I want to get all rows, where the country is equal to USA or equal to Germany. Let's run the code again. As you see, we have now all cities for the both countries. In this way you can filter the data table using a complex condition, which meets your needs. As you see, my table contains only 2 columns. If I want to remove the empty rows, where the completely row is empty, I have to check each column if empty, then I can delete the empty rows. But if my table is bigger, for example it contains 100 columns and I don't know the column names, it will be too complex to check each column. Therefore I will show you now, how to remove the empty rows from a data table, where the completely row is empty. I mean, I want to remove each row, where the content of each column is empty. For example I have this table, where I have empty content in some columns. I want to remove these rows, because the content of this row in each column is empty. But this row for example contains a value in one column. So I want to have this row in the output table. How to do this using LINQ Query? Let's see. I have here a build data table activity, where I have a table which consists of 4 columns. We have content in some rows and columns, but not each row contains content in each column. Some rows contains no content in any column. As mentioned, I want to delete only the rows, where the row doesn't contain content in any column. Let's write the query. We need to loop all rows and columns, so that we can check each row and each column. First I will write the from statement to go through each row, as we did in the previous examples. Now I want to go through each column in the data table. For this I will use the cast function. If you don't know how to use this function in LINQ, you can check the video on my channel. I explained this function in a video and how to use it to loop through rows and columns of a data table. So we have now the loop for each row and each column. Now we can set the condition to check if the content of the current cell is empty or not. For this I write this condition. I used again the row variable, and then instead on the column name I use the column variable. In this way we make the loop dynamic, so that we don't need to use the column name. After that I will select the row, which meets the condition. At the end I will add the function copy to DataTable, to convert the output to DataTable. So we have first a loop for all rows. Then we have a second loop for all columns. After that I set the condition to get only the rows, where not each column in this row is empty. And then I convert the output into a data table type. This query gives as output some rows more than one time, because we have here two loops where we add a row in each loop. Therefore I will use the function distinct, to get the unique rows from the output table. Let's complete this example and then I will explain to you why we get some rows more than one time. So the query is ready now. Let's now run the code. As you see, we don't have any empty rows, only the rows where the row is filled in one column or more. Let me now explain to you why the query gives some rows more than one time. We have the table here. Let's go through the query step by step. We first have a loop for the rows. So we are at the beginning in the first row. Then we have a loop for the columns. So we are in the first row in the first column. Here the condition is checked, if the content is empty or not. The content is not empty, therefore we select this row. So we have here the first row in the output table. But we still in the first row. Now we move on to the next column. Here the condition is again checked. The content is not empty. This row will be again selected. The same happens for the third and fourth column. So at the end of the first loop we have the first row 4 times. Then we move on to the second row and so on, it will be executed for the entire table. At the end we have some rows more than one time. Therefore I use the function distinct to get only the unique rows. Let's now move on to another scenario. Here I want to filter the table using the function IsNumeric. This means that I want to get the rows where the content of a column is numeric. I mean with numeric, where the content is number, not text or boolean or something else. For this I will change the content of the table, so that I have some numbers in the table. I will change the values of the column country and some rows to numbers. Let's now edit the query to get the rows where the content of the column country is numeric. First I need to use the function CSDR, which converts the content into a string. After that I can use the function IsNumeric. So the condition checks now, if the content of column country is numeric. The result is always true or false. True means that the content is a number. False means that the content is not number. Let's run the code to see what happens. As you see I have only 3 cities. Let's check the table if the output is correct. As you see we have here these 3 cities, which means that we only got these rows because the content of the column country is numeric. Now I have also another scenario. I have a new data table, where I only have a column. This column contains only numbers, from 1 to 10. I want to get only the rows, where the modulo 2 of a number from each row is equal to 0. It means, if I divide a number from the row by 2, I don't get any rest. For example, 1 modulo 2 is 1. 2 modulo 2 is 0. In this case I should get these numbers as output, because the module of each number is equal to 0. Let's edit the query. I first use the function CInt to get the content of the row as number. Then I can set the calculation, so that I check the content of the column account modulo 2 is equal to 0. Let's now run the code to see the result. As you see, we only have these 5 numbers, because as mentioned, the modulo of these numbers by 2 is equal to 0. Let's move to another scenario, where I want to filter a data table using a date. I have here a data table, which consists of one column, date. In this column I have different dates. The date structure is so, we have first the month, then the day, and then the year. I have 12 dates, for all months from January to December. As you see, the column type is string, not date. Let's write the query. First, as we did in the last examples, we set the from statement, to go through all rows of the data table. Then I will set the condition. First I need to get the content of the column as date, therefore I will use the function CDate. After that I will set the column using the row variable. Now I want to get only the rows, where the date is bigger than this date. It means, I want to get the date, which is after this date on the right side. After that I select the rows, which meets this condition. At the end I use the function copy to DataTable, to convert the output into a data table. So we have first the loop for the data table rows. Then I have the condition. I get the content of the column as date. And I want to get only the date after this date here. Then I select the matched rows and convert the output into data table. Let's run the code to check the result. As you see, I have only these 7 dates, which are after the date in the condition, what I defined. In this way you can filter a data table using a date. Let's see another scenario. I have here a data table, which consists of 2 columns, age and name. As you see, we have different names and ages. The name Max appears 3 times in the table. I want to filter the data table to get only the rows, where the name is Max. And then I want to get the sum of all ages for this name. I want to only get the sum of these 3 ages. First I need to create an integer variable, to save the sum of ages in it. Let's add a sign activity to write the query. First I have to loop the rows using from statement. Then I will set the condition. So I need to get the rows from the table, where the name is equal to Max. Then I will select the rows, which meets this condition. And now instead of copy to data table I will use the sum function, to get the sum of all ages for the name Max. For this function I need to use a function, for example function x. Then I will use the function CInt to convert the content into integer. Then I can use the variable x to get the content of the column age. In this way I will get the sum of all ages, where the name is equal to Max. So I have first the loop for all rows. then the condition to filter the table for name max. Then I selected the rows, which meet this condition. At the end I added the function sum, to calculate the sum of ages for the name max. Let's add write-line activity to print the sum into the console. I will run the code to check the result. As you see, we have the number 47. It's the sum of these three ages, where the name is max. This is how to get the sum of numbers from a data table after filtering it. Let's see another scenario, where I want to get the average age from the table after filtering it. First I will convert the integer variable into a double variable, because the average could be double. Double type is not standard, therefore you have to browse for it as follows. Let's now edit the query. The query is the same here. I filter the table using column name, where the name is equal to max. I only need to change the sum function into average function. And the function CInt into CDBl, to get the average as double. Let's run the code to check the result. As you see, I have this number as average for the ages of the name max. In this way we can filter a data table and calculate the average of a column. If you want to learn more about the functions, sum and average, you can check these two videos on my channel. I explained each function in details there, how to calculate the sum or the average of an array or a data table using different ways. I also have other videos about LINQ and UiPath on my channel. So you can check the playlist link on my channel. Let's now move to the last point in this video. I filtered a data table using different conditions. In each example we got a result and we had no errors. But what will happen if the LINQ query doesn't output any rows after filtering? I mean, what will happen if the result of the filter is nothing? In this case we will get an exception, because we have always at the end of the query this function, copy to data table. This function could only be successfully executed if we have some rows from the query. But if we don't have any rows after filtering, we will get this exception. What does this exception mean? How can we handle this exception in UiPath? There are different ways to do it. I will show you only one way to handle it, which is the best in my opinion. But as mentioned, you can use another ways to handle the exception. In my case I will use try-catch activity to handle the exception. So before I start with the example, please make sure you watch the try-catch video on my channel. If you didn't do it, and you don't know how to use this activity, please watch the video first. Let's start with the example. I have here a data table, which consists of two columns, age and name. I have in this column different values. I have this query here, where I filter the table for name is equal to max. I will change the name max into another name, which we don't have in the table, for example Alexander. So I have first the loop for the rows of the table. Then I have a condition to check, if the name is equal to Alexander. Then I select the row and convert the output into a data table. As mentioned, I don't have the name Alexander in my table, therefore I will not get any rows in the output table. I have here write line activity to print the content of the column name from the output table. Let's run the code to see what happens in this case. As you see, we have an exception in the assign activity. The exception is that the source contains no data rows. It means the LINQ query doesn't give any rows as output, therefore we cannot convert the output into a data table using the function copy to DataTable. Let's continue executing the code. So we got the exception, what I showed you before. The message is that we don't have any data rows. The exception type in this case is always invalid operation exception. As mentioned, I will use try catch activity to handle this exception. I will move the LINQ query into the try section. And also the loop, because if the LINQ query doesn't successfully execute it, we cannot execute the loop. Now in the catch section we have to select an exception type. We had an exception of type, invalid operation exception, therefore I will use this type here. So now I can add here some activities, which I want to execute if we get an exception of type invalid operation exception. I will first add a log message activity, so that you know that we got an exception. I will write the exception message in this activity. So if we had an exception in the LINQ query, the output table will be empty. It means that we will get an empty table with no rows or columns. But we need the columns of the output table later in the process, therefore we have to add only the columns to this table from the input table. We can do this step as follows. Add an assign activity. Here I will set the output table. Then on the right side I will use the input table with the function clone. Clone function will add the columns from the input table into the output table. It means that only the columns from the input table will be added into the output table, but without content. In this way I can use the output table in the process later, without having any issues because of missing column. I will also add a write line activity to print the columns count of the output table, so that you can check if the clone function is successfully executed. So we have here the LINQ query and try section. And then the loop for the output table. If everything is correct, this loop will be executed. But if we get an exception of type invalid operation exception, we go to this section. First the log message will be executed, then the table will be cloned. At the end the columns count will be printed out. Let's run the code to check if the exception appears and will be handled now. As you see, we got the exception. Let's continue executing the code. As you see, the code is successfully executed without any exceptions at the end. We have here the exception message from the log message activity. And then we have the number 2, which is the columns count of the output table. This means that the output table is empty, but it has the same columns as the input table, age and name. In this case we can use this table later in the process and we know that the table contains these columns. This is how to handle the exception for a LINQ query, in case the query doesn't give any rows as output. We are now at the end of this video. I hope you could learn something new and interesting. If you like the video and want to see more videos on my channel, please subscribe my channel and share the videos with your friends. If you have any idea about LINQ, what you want to see as a video on the channel, please write me a comment. Have a good day and see you in the next videos.